Hey everybody, and happy Earth Day. The Earth is healing as we recede our activities and we cease this endless busyness that we find ourselves constantly engaged in. So I wanted to take a little bit of a moment to introduce you to an activist that I had the pleasure of appearing on Capitol Hill with. He is an activist fighting PFAS, forever chemicals. If you don't know what those are, they're related to Teflon. And what they found with this chemical it was great at repelling water, oil. It was impermeable. And so they had the great idea of using this chemical on cookware, on our clothing, on our food wrappers. So this chemical proliferated throughout the world. But what we didn't know, but companies like DuPont and 3M knew, was that this chemical was also very poisonous. In the 90s, they realized that these chemicals were actually killing people. And the DoD knew this. And they went ahead and they kept dumping them in the water supply systems. And today I'm talking to Mark Favors, who is an Army veteran, a registered nurse. He is on the front lines of the COVID fight right now in Harlem. He has organized in New York State to fight PFAS contamination. He's become a leading voice in this fight. So let's call up Mark Favors and get him on the line. He's waiting for us. Hey, Mark, how you doing, man?
How's it going?
You're right on the front lines, aren't you?
Yeah, it's been rough, but...
What's it like, Mark?
Crazy. I mean, it's just a lot of people just dying and, everybody's usually on the vent and there's really no set treatment, so there's not much we can do.
What are the ages you're seeing, Mark?
We have a few in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
So this thing's getting everybody. This idea that it's just older people is
No,
just...
no. I think up on our regular ICU, I think they had somebody die that was 37. One a young lady one time before they intubated her, she was like, I'm a mother of a 5-month-old. Don't let me die. We just need a medical treatment that can help the patients,
And there's just nothing. I mean, are you using the the hydrochloroquine and the that stuff, or the
they were
AIDS?
doing that stuff, but they're also doing some other experimental drugs,
and nothing's helping.
As a nurse, you want to think that it's helping, so it's hard to tell. So we'll have to see what the numbers are.
And then, Mark, are you okay?
I'm okay. It was better than last weekend where we had a lot of, patients that didn't make it and young. I'm dependent on a 3M respirator. That's another issue.
Yeah, why is that an issue, Mark? Because some of the people who are watching us probably don't know. You're also a forever chemical activist.
Right, and 3M was helped co-patent the forever chemicals in firefighting foam. That's been the chemicals that have, poisoned a lot of people. Over 400 communities in this country, their drinking water, a chemical that's been linked to decreased effectiveness of vaccinations, cancers, and a lot of diseases, which, hit my family hard.
Yeah, talk about that. How did you get involved with being an activist in PFAS?
I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, and a lot of military in my family. And then I learned a couple of years ago where Peterson Air Force Base admitted that they had dumped these toxic chemicals into the drinking water source of where a lot of my family members resided for 30 years, 3 times a year. And then when I started looking, a lot of my family members, including my father, my grandparents, died of cancer. 16 of my family members ended up with some type of cancer or illness. 4 of them died of kidney cancer, which has been linked to PFAS. And these were on both sides of the family and some married in. So it cannot be genetic. I had a 14-year-old cousin that had to get a kidney transplant 2 years ago. And his mother had lived in the contamination area since she was 10 years old. And none of my family members outside of the contamination area had kidney cancer. So that's when I started trying to, get justice.
PFAS has had the biggest health study of any chemical ever in the history of modern science. And it is definitively linked to these diseases, kidney cancer being one of them.
Right.
And still, we're not getting the kind of response that is adequate to the problem that we're facing. Would you say that's true, Mark?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's still not regulated in this country.
Where do these two issues meet, do you think? Isn't our immune systems compromised by PFAS?
99% of Americans have PFAS in their bloodstream. And you have these chemicals in your blood that have been scientifically proven to lower the effectiveness of vaccines and to lower the body's ability to make antibodies. And also it lowers our response immune system. And also PFAS also has been proven to be toxic to our lungs. And then, another issue comes up with the high rate of African Americans. A lot of people say, oh, it's because they're overweight. There have been studies that show how PFAS increases weight gain.
And hypertension as well.
Yeah.
High blood pressure.
All these things are interrelated. So I think what we learned with COVID is that you can't just deal with these things in isolation. I think we've extubated 9 patients and sent them to the floor. And, normally when they're on the vent, they don't get off. So we've had a lot of deaths, but we've had a lot of very inspirational stories as well. And so, that's inspired us and that's given us the strength to keep going. These chemicals and these viruses, they don't see Black, white, Latino, Native American, they don't see Republican or Democrat. They don't see any of that. And people are now seeing that, and that we have to come together. If not, we'll all die together.
So you're an Army veteran. Were you a nurse in the Army? How did you become a nurse?
The Army recruiters told me, I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse. And they said they would train me to be a licensed practical nurse. And I was just in the reserves at the time, and I can come back and get my license and work as a nurse in the civilian field. And so I took it. What
did it do for your life and your family? Would you say, was it a positive thing?
Oh, very positive thing. My father never paid child support, so I was raised by a single mother. My mother worked for the Air Force 40 years. The military provided everything for me and my mother growing up, and it was good to me. I got paid to become a nurse as opposed to having to go somewhere, take out student loan. We have young family members that are going into the military. It had always been a positive experience until I was never thought that they had been poisoning our drinking water for years.
What happens that contorts the morality of a country in such a way that lets that happen?
The downside of the military structure is that it's top down. It's a handful of people who are making these decisions, right? So it's only a few people who may not even live on the base.
Did these things wake you up to realities that you weren't aware of? I mean, obviously PFAS, but as far as your attitudes, political beliefs, those kinds of things?
And a lot of people are saying this is how, the Second Amendment came. The reason we had the Second Amendment was because Hamilton was like, we need a federal army. And they were like, are you crazy? We don't want them to have that much control over the citizens. And Hamilton was like, but why would a federal army made of citizens harm their fellow citizens? And that's what we have now. The military has done some actions that have harmed American citizens.
And knowing when they were doing it that they would be poisoning people and they were linked to these diseases.
From their own experiments. So there has to be some accountability. And even Republicans have said with other issues that they shouldn't be allowed to investigate themselves. So what we have to do is we have to say as a society, how can we hold the DOD accountable without getting into the politics?
What gives you hope, man? What keeps you going? What'd you tell all the young activists that I hope are watching right now?
First, thank you. We need you. You're our future. There's no generation gap. A lot of these family members who may have gone through hard times, but they're hoping that the next generation will do what's necessary to prevent this happening to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We can't do it without the young activists.
Would you say that collectively This is a reality check that wipes away all the political framing and really just shows that we really are in all this together. Would you say
Yeah, and it makes us all better and stronger, because you're going to want the delivery people to have vaccines, right? You're going to want the people in the grocery store who are cleaning the lettuce and the vegetables. You're going to want those people to have a vaccine. PFAS affects building antibodies, and it's still up for question if COVID will build antibodies, because like they pointed out, there's still no vaccine for HIV.
Nope. So that's a virus.
Right. So you're not guaranteed that you have a vaccine.
Well, man, I hope you don't get sick, brother. We need you. You're such a beauty. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for everything you all have been doing, participants doing, supporting us.
We do it so much better together, don't we? Don't we all? Anyway, man, God bless you, man.
All right. Thank you, and love you all. Take care.
Lots of love, man. You too, brother. So love. What COVID-19, for me anyway, has exposed is this lie that we're all created equally here in the United States. We're going to talk to a very special youth leader in the climate change movement. He's a young man that I got to meet when he was just a teenager in 2015. And he's grown into such a beautiful youth leader. And yeah, let's bring him in. This is Vic Barrett. Vic, we're going to call you up. Vic Barrett.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Good to see you. Yeah, so we met on the Lower East Side in New York. God, that was in 2015. And the Solutions Project was just launching the 100% campaign. Now what are you doing? Let us know what you've been up to in these
The biggest thing I did since then was I joined a lawsuit, Juliana versus United States.
What is that?
Basically making the argument that because they've known for so long that fossil fuels could lead to climate change, that they directly took action to put our generation's constitutional rights at risk. So I've been on that lawsuit for about 5 years now. And now I actually work for the Alliance for Climate Education, which I was in when you met me in high school. And I'm a full-time staff member with them.
It's amazing, man.
I think where I found the most excitement was definitely working with other young people. I've gotten to be really engaged in getting the vote out and voter registration. That's what my job is right now. And I'm really excited to get to guide young people through the same journey that I went through and let them see all the things that could come out of being an activist, of fighting for justice.
What is the general feeling of the young people with this issue?
I think that it's definitely scary to young people, but I think that being a young person today is kind of holding a lot of that anxiety about what the world is like and kind of trying to transform it in yourself into motivation and action and wanting to be involved. And so I feel like out of a lot of the young people I meet, I just get this huge sense of excitement by the ability they see for us to make a lot of changes and for people to pay attention to what we have to say.
What makes them excited about it?
I think a lot of it has to do with young people just wanting a chance to shape our future. I feel like we see like so many of the detriments of like how society's been ran before we were even born. And I think there's just this huge sense of urgency and commitment to kind of wanting to shape our reality in a way that we haven't had the opportunity to. I think that's what pushes a lot of young people kind of just imagining the world that we want to build.
Now we're in the middle of this massive pandemic. It's hitting people of color. Do you see that as hand in hand?
For sure. I've been seeing so many intersections. And I think the youth climate movement too has been talking about so many intersections between COVID-19 and climate change. I'm definitely trying to make sure that instead of pitting the narratives against each other, like some people have fallen into the trap of doing. And I think that with climate change and with pandemics, they could really seem out of our hands and out of our control. But what we can control is how it impacts people and who it impacts. And I think with both, it really all comes down to the front lines. There's an intentionality in how our systems work and who ends up being a shield to people who tend to be wealthier and whiter and have more political power. And so I think we see especially a lot of Black and African American communities like historically have been confined into these areas that are stripped of nutritional food options and that and where pollution is high and where their political voices are taken away because of redlining and voter ID laws. And I think that creates communities with really not a lot of political power to change anything about that.
You know, the one thing that really struck me was when I was at Standing Rock, it was really dark. There was a really dark moment there, and there was a full-on, American military force there with weapons of war, ready to descend on these beautiful, prayerful, solemn people that were fighting for, clean water, right? And basically their tribal, the treaty rights. I was scared, and they said to me, "Brother Mark, don't be frightened. We've lived through worse. We're still here. We've been dealing with this for 100 years.
Yeah.
For 200 years. That creates a kind of community that we need to deal with things like COVID or climate change, and that we lend each other the help that each other needs in order to support young people like you finding your voice and your leadership and yours in this space,
And I think people like you've used your platform to uplift these voices that otherwise would not be lifted up in the way that we need, in the way that's necessary. Because so many, like you said, so many of these communities are the ones that hold the answers to the type of culture and the way to life that we need to have in order for our world to function the way that it needs to keep going and to be sustainable. And I think that as soon as you recognize that is when you know what work to uplift and what grassroots movements you need to be looking at, because there's so many that come from just like this historical place of just fixing the problems that are put in front of them.
I see COVID as like a little mini climate change. It's like climate change encapsulated into one single issue, one single moment. And it's exposing all of the places that have been broken or are weak in our system and that will not be able to sustain us when real climate change hits.
Yeah, I think that it's pointing out so much also about us as people and how we decide to respond to issues like this, because, we see us giving all this information of what we need to do in order to keep other people safe, in order to keep all of us safe. And there's still folks that want to go out of their way to fight against that.
What kind of opportunity do you see the communities creating from these breakdowns?
I just think this is a really good opportunity to build empathy, or at least try to teach people about how to look at their life situations and know that other people are in worse places that they could help them out of.
Yeah, we're all relying on grocery workers, fruit pickers, drivers. They are literally holding this whole thing together, and we are all deeply connected to each other in that way. No matter how much money you have, your life right now is dependent on that grocery worker being able to stock those shelves, or that person in California picking fruit who's out there putting their lives at risk every day to feed this country, right? How do you feel about the Green New Deal and this whole new notion of a stimulus package that could span trillions of dollars?
I think that if there's a policy that wants them to work in green energy, sounds amazing to me.
I know.
And I think that what's really important is just knowing how to be an ally to young people, knowing when to step up, knowing when to step back, knowing that we have a lot of ideas and creativity, and if given the means and the resources and the platforms to put them into play, there's so many ideas in the youth climate movement and so many solutions and innovation. And I think that the best thing adult allies can do, and adults who want to support fighting against climate change can do, is making sure that young people are at the forefront of speaking about it.
I agree. Obviously, it's your world. I mean, we've had our lick at it, and we didn't do a good job. It hasn't been fair, the world that we're leaving you. And so, I think it's really appropriate that your voices are lifted up and that your concerns are taken seriously.
I think what I would say is take right now this pause, kind of like you were speaking to, this pause on everything, on production, productivity, and always needing to have everything right away. Kind of this moment we have of reflection, I would just say take it to really think about what your values are and decide who you can help, whether that's your neighbor, somebody else in your community. Just really use this as a time to go outside of yourself.
You know, it's always funny to me, like, you know, people are like, oh, you know, you're getting paid, or there's someone, you know, no one's doing this for money. Everyone is doing this work, is just doing it for the love of their community, the love of themselves, the love of their family, and the love of this beautiful, beautiful world that we've been gifted shortly, you know, in time.
Yeah.
And so, keep it up, man. It's been so nice talking to you and seeing you grow into who you are today, and you know, and getting out there. And I'm an ally, man. I'm there for you. God bless you, man. Be safe out there.
Yeah, you too. You too.